Penn State President Eric Barron has been in office almost 6 months now. I sat down with him for an exclusive one-on-one interview to discuss his new position, the aftermath of the scandal, and challenges the university faces going forward. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so 170 days ago, on May 12th, you began a new role here at Penn State. What has your life been like for those past 6 months?
Well, more than a little busy, as you can imagine. A lot of exciting things going on. Big effort to meet as many alumni as possible and donors and get deeply involved in the whole process of understanding the university so that we can go off and do great things.
What is the day in the life of a university president like? Because you've been a university president at Florida State and now you're here at Penn State. What's life like as a university president?
Well, the day is quite busy with appointments, as you can imagine, and they span the entire gamut of the university. If you think of any component of the university, whether it's research or economic development or admissions, academic success and excellence, athletics, you name it, and there'll be appointments that fit right in with that. And it tends to be a life that's in 30-minute increments, as opposed to those longer periods of time that I think you'd like to invest sometimes. And I would say more than 9 out of 10 times there's some kind of evening event. And a similar thing occurs on weekends, both Saturday and Sunday. So, if you take the last weekend, here was a big football game. This brought the opportunity to meet with donors individually and at a tailgate and larger groups, and so many of our friends are here that, even on Sunday, here was an opportunity to talk to the Liberal Arts Development Council and then to talk to the Atherton Society, which are individuals that have put Penn State in their will, and to do an activity with the Blue Band, which I call a reverse tailgate, since they never get to experience a tailgate, to having meals with people that are important to the university. So it's a very busy life.
Yeah, it sounds like a wide range of activities as well.
It is. So that makes it fun.
Yeah, I'm sure. So do you have a favorite part, and then on the opposite, what's the least favorite part of this role that you're in? Okay,
well, both my wife and I feel strongly that whenever you're stressed or tired, the best thing to do is to go to a student event, because it changes your thoughts just almost immediately. You feel all that energy and you feel all that excitement. But like, for instance, last night I went to a Center County off-campus student housing roundtable where you had all these students, and every 15 minutes the people sitting at your table changed, and got a chance to hear what students were concerned about in terms of living here around University Park. And I left feeling really good, which doesn't make any sense, right? Because you're hearing about some of the problems in terms of what leases are like and in terms of feeling safe and all these different things. But I left with this sense that, okay, these students are paying attention, they're being thoughtful, they're communicating well, and at the end of it, I thought, okay, some of these things are things we can work on, and so over and over again, if ever I'm tired or if ever I'm a little bit down, I'll go find a student event to go to. It almost doesn't matter what kind it is. It's uplifting. It feels good. What's the toughest part? The toughest part is problems that you can't fix. And yet, they're problems, and you understand that, and you know what you would like to do, but it doesn't work that way. This is a big, challenging environment, and people claim that a public university is the most difficult place to be because you have so many different constituencies. I need to make the students happy. I need to make their parents happy. They may or may not be the same thing. I have a whole alumni base. I have a donor base. I have a state legislature. I have a media component. And so all of these different groups that you can start to imagine that have athletic fans, all these different groups that you can imagine, that it's probably impossible to satisfy them all. And so many people tell me, okay, that's not a job I want. I want one person to satisfy my boss, or I want one group to satisfy the customer. And it's a very different environment. So I'd have to say, the things that you can't fix.
You did come into this job after a scandal happened here at Penn State.
Yeah.
You weren't here in November of 2011,
No.
But there has been a lot of dust that has settled surrounding the whole situation, but there's still a lot of divide in the university with how the university handled the situation. And even yesterday at the Board of Trustees meeting, there's still a lot of people who are very vocal about how it was handled. And so as the university president, how do you see everybody moving forward in a positive direction together? How can you do that?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's going to take a certain amount of time. And even though we think a lot of dust is settled, there's a lot of things out there that will still provide clarity. And I think history will come to a place where we all look and say, yeah, okay, I see that and I understand that. And you know, the response of the university in terms of taking actions to make sure people were protected, those were really good. And gee, the media got this one wrong, and the media got it wrong and other people got it wrong. Okay, here are some other things that we got right. I have a lot of confidence that given a little bit of time, this will all be fine. You know, a part two of it is that, you know, we'd like to get there a little bit faster. And I think what a lot of people don't see is the degree to which so many different alumni actually feel the same way. They don't really feel satisfied with all the outcomes. They don't really feel satisfied with a lot of the commentary. They don't think we have a full accounting. I don't know of anybody who thinks it's done. We've got it, and we should be satisfied. I know no one of that. We also know that of all these people, they all love this institution in a really big way. But they see two paths forward. One is now, and one is we need to have all those other pieces of evidence to come forward so that we see clearly, hopefully once and for all, exactly what is right and what is not. And so if we can get people realizing that at least on the fundamentals, people actually agree, and some of the more inflammatory statements on either side are not really appropriate and not true, then I think we'll make some progress. I think the other thing about it is you lose all the good stories in the midst of this debate. You lose all the good things about all the individuals that were involved, or maybe we'll discover were not involved. And so in the consequence of being, you know, one side arguing here and one side arguing here, and, you know, illustrating our irritation with the other side, we've missed the opportunity to sit there and talk about the role Joe Paterno played in making sure we had athletic graduation rates that were the envy of the world. We missed the fact that the opportunity to sit there and talk about the fact that as a faculty member here, when I had a football player in my class, I filled out a form on how they were doing, and if they missed a quiz or they weren't turning in their homework, I'd have that young man in my office the next day, not because I called him, but because Paterno sent him over there, and that student said, "I'm sorry, Dr. Barron, that won't happen again. I will be in class and I will turn in my homework." This is a type of attitude that made for a very successful school. So while we sit there and battle out the exact process of how we're going to reach a conclusion that we will inevitably reach, we're missing the opportunity to remind ourselves of all the reasons why we're very proud of this institution and you know, how we can take advantage of all that pride. We miss all those good stories. We've skipped a period of time where we're not talking about that. We're talking about who we agree with and who we disagree with. But above all, it's going to take time.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've talked to alumni, students, donors, everybody, and you've heard a lot of
people.
A lot of opinions.
Yeah, and I find everybody loves this institution a great deal, and they have a slightly different take, which in many cases, because of how we feel, comes to be not slight but significant in terms of the best way to deal with it and to approach it. And very reasonable people on both sides of the issues are coming to very different conclusions.
Yeah, and with all those people that you've talked to, I know some believe that since you weren't here when the scandal took place, when it really hit the fan,
yeah,
that you're left to clean up somebody else's mess. What's your reaction to that?
Okay, so I have several reactions to it. One is I was a faculty member here for 20 years. I was a dean for 4 years. There is no way Penn State doesn't get in your blood if you're here for very long at all. So I took all of this very personally myself, and so I didn't feel like I wasn't here. I didn't feel like, you know, and I kept a lot of friends from people that were on the faculty, that were donors, that were alumni. So I had a sense of that I felt, you know, there's no way that a Penn Stater of any form can't feel strongly about this issue. But I think the other thing about it is I have a perspective that nobody else has, or at least, you know, no one in a leadership position might have in the same way. And that is, I was a Penn Stater who was outside of Pennsylvania, and I've watched how the stories have evolved. And I've noted that here's an institution that ranks extraordinarily highly. And this is very important to students, because students who graduate from great universities have better career success. I watched the fact that the enrollments, the applications to come here hit an all-time high, almost 127,000 people. You know, you watch the degree to which businesses want to recruit at this institution. And, you know, we're up in the, you know, sometimes we're number one in some magazines, and the lowest ranking I've ever seen is 12. Okay, this is 3 years of over $800 million in research funding, external research funding. While the federal government and everybody else is cutting back, this means the faculty here are extraordinarily competitive. The money is getting smaller, but we're still growing stronger. That means a lot of weaker institutions are losing money. This one is still sitting up there among the very top universities in the country. So I recognize, being outside, that the Penn State brand is extraordinarily strong. And quite frankly, it's going to be hard to change that unless you have a wholesale change in the type of student that wants to come here and the type of faculty that wants to come here. The other thing is that I have always admired the culture of this institution. And I remember it very, very clearly as a faculty member that here we have individuals on this campus that are always trying to be stronger, always trying to be better. And I've gone to other places where that sense of being competitive and testing your ideas in the marketplace and going after that next grant because you were going to be better than anybody else. And those programs that, you know, were number 10 who, you know, 8 years later are number 5 or number 2, that you have this culture of excellence at this institution that's very, very powerful. And when I go other places, I try to copy Penn State. So I didn't look at myself as, okay, I am coming in an aftermath. I looked at myself as coming into an institution that I admired that culture of excellence from the very beginning, that the institution is even stronger over the last decade than it was before. And my job is not to clean up a mess. My job is, how do you make a great institution even greater? You know, so I come really excited to be here.
Yeah, And as you mentioned, you were a faculty member here, you were a dean here, you've been associate professors at other universities, but now you're back at Penn State and you're in such a different role. Do you
True.
miss being in the classroom, being with students?
I do, and I'm about on Monday to do my third class, and also the President's Leadership Academy, a one-credit course in the spring. It's hard not to like being in the classroom once, and I love teaching gen ed classes. I didn't just teach in my field. I like teaching gen ed classes with the idea of how to get people excited about science and study of the earth. So I do miss that, and I would have told you, almost all the way through my life that I wanted to be a professor. I was a professor. I loved being a professor. And my life has taken this kind of odd detour into different leadership roles, and I've come to recognize that I enjoy making other people successful, and I can get just as much personal satisfaction as grading that test that's got an exceptional set of answers to it, or to see a research project grow and be successful, or to watch one of my graduate students take a job at another institution. So my role changed, but equal amount of pride and happiness.
Yeah, and as you said, you're a scientist and you have a degree in geology, a master's and a doctorate in oceanography.
Yep.
And I know that you're also passionate about global warming, about sustainability. And the senior class gift campaign just voted to gift the university an array of solar panels as their legacy on the university.
Yeah.
So what is your hope for Penn State throughout your tenure here for improving sustainability?
Yeah. You know what? I always think of myself as I almost would like to use the word in rational environmentalism. It's an interesting world. When you have a lot of people on it, you will have impact. And when you have a lot of people that are using resources, you're going to have impact. And there's no way to erase that. But there are lots of different ways that we can look at what our footprint is, or we can encourage research and development to allow different alternatives to be options when financially they're not. And we can build awareness on particular issues that allow people to make decisions that are enabling. I mean, you watch the simple things like having the president's box go to zero waste, which saved 3,000 pounds going into a landfill if we compare ourselves to past year. And you see the student involvement in those activities, and you realize, we can have substantial impact. We can move to fuels as we are that have a lower amount of CO2 per energy equivalent, and we can look for other opportunities and develop them because we invent things that allow us to store energy and transmit it, that makes renewables more interesting. So this is the way I like to think, that part of this is research and what we can accomplish, part of it is education and what we can accomplish, and each step of this brings us to a more sustainable position, while at the same time realizing that if you put billions of people on a piece of land, it's hard not to have an impact.
So last question.
Yeah.
What is the single biggest issue facing Penn State going forward?
Okay, so if I think about it, this is an institution that's poised to go up another level. And the faculty sense it, and the leadership sense it. And we see lots of different areas that we could invest that would allow us to be to take another leap in terms of how transformative we are. We've seen it with this institution becoming a research powerhouse. When you go back 25 years, it wasn't there. You can see that change in commitment to education and to delivery of the curriculum and online. And you go back 20 years, and it wasn't there. It just wasn't there. And so now you see, I think, in terms of how we use technology, in terms of how we drive economies, how we promote student career success, how we promote students that are much more engaged because we know that student is much more successful. So we feel this sense that we're poised to take that next level. Yet we're in a very resource-constrained world, and we have been for 7 or 8 years, where the resources have been constrained. So how you innovate and how you pick between those areas of innovation when resources are tough, that's the toughest problem a university faces.
Dr. Barron serves as Penn State's 18th president following 2 years as president at Florida State University. For the Center County Report, I'm Amy Simpson.